The carnival arrived overnight. No one in Fairbrook saw the trucks roll in. No one heard the rustling of tents being set up. No workers hammering stakes into the frozen earth. It was just there, looming on the outskirts of town like it had been waiting. Maybe that should have been my first warning. I don't know what pulled me there. Maybe boredom? Maybe something else. The posters had been everywhere for days, plastered across telephone poles, taped to store windows, even tucked inside my mailbox as if someone had placed it there just for me. They all looked the same, cheaply printed on glossy paper, the colors too bright, the ink slightly smudged. At the center of every poster, the same image, a single red balloon floating in the air above a grinning clown. Not just any clown, him. His oversized suit was striped black and white, the fabric wrinkled like it had been worn for decades. His painted smile was too wide, stretching unnaturally across his face, cutting into his pale cheeks. His eyes? They weren't like the playful, exaggerated clown eyes you'd expect. They were hollow, dark, like pits in the earth that could swallow you whole. The text at the bottom was simple: The Great Harlan's Midnight Carnival. One night only. I should have ignored it. I should have stayed home, but I didn't. The entrance was nothing more than a rusted archway, its neon lights flickering weakly as though they might burn out at any second. The moment I stepped through, the air changed. It wasn't just the drop in temperature. It was something else. A pressure, a weight in the air that pressed down on my skin, making my breath come shorter. The scent of popcorn and cotton candy was thick, but beneath it was something foul, something sweet and rotting. The carnival was too quiet. There were people, dozens of them, drifting between the tents and booths. But they weren't talking. No laughter, no chatter, just the occasional creak of a ride in the distance. Their faces were blank, their eyes unfocused, their movements too slow, too deliberate. I swallowed hard and forced myself to move. And that's when I saw him. The clown. He stood in the center of the carnival, motionless, a single red balloon gripped in his gloved hand. His white face paint was cracked, as if it had been applied years ago and never touched up. And he was staring at me, his lips curled into a smile. I turned away, heart pounding, shoving my hands into my jacket pockets as I forced myself deeper into the carnival. But no matter where I went, no matter which ride I tried to distract myself with, every time I glanced up, he was there, not moving, not blinking, just standing, watching. The balloon in his hand swayed. I tried to leave, but the exit was gone. I circled the carnival 3 times, searching for the rusted archway, but it wasn't there. I found myself running in circles, my footsteps crunching against the dirt, my breathing growing more ragged. The laughter started then, low at first, bubbling up from somewhere unseen. It wasn't the cheerful sound of carnival joy. It was something else, warped, twisted, a chorus of giggles and whispers that grew louder and louder until it filled the entire space. Then, silence. I turned. The clown was right behind me. The balloon in his hand let out a slow, wheezing hiss as it deflated, shriveling like a dying thing. His painted-on smile cracked wider, revealing teeth, long, jagged, yellowing things that didn't belong in any human mouth. I ran. I didn't think. I just ran. But the carnival shifted around me. Tents that hadn't been there before now blocked my path. Rides twisted, stretching taller, their rusted metal groaning as if they were alive. The air thickened, pressing in, choking me. And still, the laughter followed. A whisper in my ear, a giggle behind my back. A cold breath against my neck. I stumbled into a mirror maze. The glass warped my reflection into grotesque shapes, my arms too long, my face melting. My own eyes stared back at me, black pits of nothing. Then the reflections weren't mine anymore. They were his. Hundreds of him, filling every mirror, grinning, staring, reaching out. A cold hand clamped onto my shoulder. I screamed. And then, darkness. When I woke up, the carnival was gone. No tents, no lights, no sound. Just an empty lot beneath a dead sky. The grass was blackened, the ground charred, like something had burned it all away. I staggered to my feet, my hands trembling, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Then I saw it, in my hand, a single red balloon, and it was still laughing. I never should have gone to the Hollow Point Carnival. The name itself was ominous, but the way it appeared overnight just outside of town made it feel like something out of a ghost story. You have to come. My friend Brian had insisted, dragging me along with a group of our friends. It's like it came from nowhere. One day it was just an empty field, and now, boom, carnival. No advertisements, no warning, just here. The carnival stretched across the darkened field, its massive Ferris wheel turning silently against the night sky. The air smelled of burnt sugar and something else, something foul just beneath the surface. The lights flickered strangely, as if the whole place ran on dying electricity. People moved strangely through the crowds, too still, too quiet. Their faces were blurred in the dim glow of the hanging lanterns. It felt like I was walking through a dream or a nightmare. "Let's try the funhouse," Brian suggested, pointing toward a massive, dilapidated structure that seemed too large to fit within the carnival's small perimeter. The sign above the entrance read, "The House of Living Mirrors." Something about it made my skin crawl. The mirrors inside weren't just reflections. They shifted, showing glimpses of people who weren't there, twisted faces, watching from within the glass. I turned to Brian, but he was gone. "Brian?" My voice echoed too loudly. The walls seemed closer now, the glass pressing inward. Then from behind me, a whisper, soft, cold. "You don't belong here." I turned, but no one was there. The mirror in front of me showed my reflection, but it wasn't right. My eyes, too wide, too dark. And then it smiled at me. I ran. The halls twisted, leading nowhere, my reflection appearing in every turn, staring, grinning. The whispers grew louder, filling my ears. I burst out of the funhouse, half gasping for breath. But the carnival had changed. The lights were dimmer, the sounds quieter, the people wrong. Their heads turned toward me in eerie unison, their faces expressionless. Then I saw Brian, only it wasn't him. His skin was pale, his eyes black voids. He reached for me with hands too long, fingers curling unnaturally. "Come back," he said, his voice layered with something else. Something ancient, something hungry. I ran, past the twisted carousel where the horses had eyes that followed me, past the silent Ferris wheel with its motionless passengers, their heads tilted at unnatural angles. The entrance was gone. The world outside had disappeared into a void of swirling darkness. The carnival was all that existed now. Then I felt it, a hand on my shoulder. Cold, brittle fingers. "You wanted to see," the voice whispered. "Now you'll never leave." The lights flickered once more, and then everything went dark. I never planned on going to Hollow Fair that night, but the flashing lights, the echoing Calliope music, and the scent of caramelized sugar in the air pulled me in like a moth to a flame. Hollow Fair wasn't just any traveling carnival. It was the oldest in the state, with a reputation draped in mystery. Some said it never had an opening date, that it simply appeared overnight, and when it left, people were known to disappear with it. I should have listened to those stories. The ticket vendor was a gaunt man with pale, waxy skin and eyes that didn't quite look in the same direction. He handed me a crimson-colored ticket, his fingers icy cold against mine. "Enjoy the show," he rasped, his lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. As I stepped inside, the fairgrounds pulsed with eerie life. The Ferris wheel turned too slowly, the painted horses on the carousel wore expressions of agony rather than joy, and the funhouse mirrors distorted reflections into grotesque, twitching figures. The crowd was unnerving. Many had their faces half hidden by masks, some laughing in too high pitches, others watching me without blinking. Then I saw him. A clown stood at the edge of the fair, holding a single black balloon. His costume was faded red and yellow, smeared as if something dark had been wiped off it. His face paint was cracked, but his grin was perfect, too perfect. His eyes locked onto mine, and I felt an immediate visceral wrongness. I turned away, pretending I hadn't seen him, but I could feel him watching me as I walked deeper into the carnival. I wandered past booths promising prizes no one seemed to win. A ring toss where the rings never landed, a dart game where the balloons never popped. The game operators all wore identical smiles, thin, stretched, insincere. Then I heard my name. It was whispered just behind me. I spun around. No one was there, just the clown standing closer now, his balloon swaying slightly though there was no wind. I stumbled backward and nearly collided with a fortune teller's tent. A woman inside gestured me in with long, bony fingers. "You're not supposed to be here," she said before I even sat down. Her voice was hushed, urgent. "What do you mean?" My heart was hammering. "This place, it's hungry." She glanced past me, her pupils shrinking. "He's already chosen you." I didn't have to ask who she meant. The clown. My stomach twisted. "Then how do I leave?" I whispered. She shook her head. "You don't." I bolted from the tent, pushing through the laughing, masked crowd. The carnival suddenly felt endless, stretching in all directions, booths and rides rearranging themselves when I wasn't looking. The clown was always ahead, no matter which way I turned. Then the lights flickered. The Calliope music warped, slowing, distorting. The people around me froze in place. Their faces peeled away like paper, revealing grins too wide, eyes too hollow. I ran. I ran past the Ferris wheel, past the carousel, past the rigged games and funhouse mirrors that no longer showed my reflection. The clown was behind me now, his laughter bubbling up like something thick and wet. The balloon he held had turned white, and something inside it pressed against the thin latex, as if trying to escape. I saw the exit, the ticket booth, the rusted archway beyond it. I sprinted toward it, but the clown was already there, standing motionless, his blackened teeth parting in a whisper. Stay. The world twisted. The sky folded in on itself, the stars bleeding downward. The ground beneath me softened, pulling me under like quicksand. The clown stepped closer, holding out the balloon, the surface bulging, distorting. Then it popped, and the last thing I saw was my own face, grinning back at me from inside the deflated rubber, before the fair swallowed me whole. Hollow Fair was gone by morning, and so was I.